Hi. So for this second video, I wanted to talk a bit more about what you could expect from a soul contract reading. Give you a little taste of what it is. Also an opportunity to talk about it. And so, we can save more time in the reading itself so we don't go through the history and the full understanding so you can get right into the core of the reading, which is, really what it's all about. So depending on how many letters in your name, you'll have a chart with either 3 numbers that repeat or 7 numbers. So if you have a shorter name, you'll have a 3-number chart that repeats. For most people, I think it's 12 or 13 letters. Then they will have a 7-number name, and those numbers will be put around the Star of David, as I described. And the way this is done is each English or phonetically sounded out letter in person's name. So if it's, Spanish or French, it is converted into English phonetics. And some sounds are combined. So there's certain sounds that are combined uh, and put together, and those represent certain numbers in the Hebrew language. In Hebrew, the letters and the numbers are the same. They're vibrations. They're frequencies. So those are, like I said, put around the star, each number, and then as so they're put around the star and they're added up, and then they're reduced, like in more traditional numerology. They're reduced to 22 or less. And the way that the soul destiny is calculated is all the numbers on the right or the left-hand side are added up, and all the numbers on the right-hand side are added up. Then they're reduced again if they're more than 22, and you get your soul destiny, which is kind of the culmination of your entire chart. You're not going to come into that generally until a bit later in life, and once you've worked through a lot of the karma in the rest of your chart. So it's kind of like the very final yearning desire of your soul. So these 22 numbers or letters in the Hebrew alphabet, like I said, represent a certain frequency or vibration. And with those vibrations come, certain karmic lessons, certain talents, certain propensities. There are things, called, associated with the directions, the astrological signs, and a number of other aspects. And that'll all be given in a reading. So you'll get pieces, archetypes from other systems that, you'll be able to often relate to and understand, from past experiences that maybe you've had readings in other ways, or you understand certain esoteric systems of wisdom. So Nicholas did write a book. This is how I started my journey, is I found his book back in 2014. I did a self-reading, spent, I don't know how many days, it's a while now, but I know I spent a lot of time reading, and got a bit of a sense of it, and then I put it away for whatever reason. And then recently I came back to it with, a renewed sense of that passion of really understanding what it was all about, and understanding the real benefits, or the real core of understanding a person, and a map to what they might be challenged with in their life, and some really basic but powerful things they can work on in their lives. And there's also a lot of not so basic things, healing and trauma work and stuff like that. So each number has its own aspect of, what's going to help it work through that karma, and the numbers work together. But, I got this certain sense when I did my own chart, and it was great. Everything is in the book. Everything you need is in the book. But, I really didn't get the full experience until I had a reading done by a reader. And, there's a number of reasons for that. Some of the reasons are the reader just understands the numbers, and really understands the essence of the numbers. That's a big part of it. But also how the numbers work together um, with the other numbers, and how certain numbers support other numbers. And there's a bit of that in the book, but a reader is going to really intuitively know that. And a reading isn't just a reader dictating to you, some knowledge or understanding. It's the dynamic between you and the reader. So you're a part of the reading just as much as the reader is. And through that conversation of, questions and discussion, for me, it was a very deep, there was a deep breath where I really felt seen and understood, and, a little less crazy, or a little less challenged by things, right? It was this dialogue between myself and the reader, and that was really I really felt held in that. So the readings are going to be recorded. I encourage people not to take notes during the session, just so they can be a part of the conversation as much as possible. And with the recordings, you can go back and take notes. Certainly at a later time. It's a really good thing to watch the reading a number of times, after a while. So that'll be provided by a reader. Certainly I will. So there was a few things that I didn't mention in the other video that I recorded, so I wanted to come here and just reiterate a few things and add a few things. So the birth chart soul contract reading will be the dominant energy that a person has for their entire life. So that they're going to be faced with these challenges throughout their lifetime. Now, if they change their name or have some other difference to the way that they use their name, that's going to affect their life to some degree. And in the future, I'll be doing readings that'll speak to that more. But because the birth chart is the dominant one, it is kind of the most important. It'll be the underlying expression of a person, the underlying difficulties or challenges, but also abilities or talents. It may seem very confusing at first. There's a bunch of numbers, there's some symbols, it's all around the Star of David. But we can really simplify it by breaking it into the physical parts and the spiritual parts. So the physical parts happen in the first part of their person's life and continue on through their lives. And while the spiritual parts are always there, they don't necessarily really take effect or come into a person's experience until maybe a bit later in life. Some people experience it as early as maybe 20, but generally people really start to face these challenges and have these talents or desires when they're about 35 to 42, somewhere in that range. And they start to come online, and for me, my experience was when this happened, I almost became a different person, or it certainly felt like I was. Like there were things in my life that had never really been a problem for me or a struggle for me, things that I hadn't considered, right? Some very powerful energies in my case. But also some things that I wanted for myself, things that I aspired to, which are the goals, right? So that would be the spiritual goals and the talents and the things that I was a little challenged with, right? The talents are usually a little bit of a challenge, but once they come online, once you work through that, they become some of your hugest assets, right? The things that you can use to work through a lot of the other challenging parts. And the spiritual karma, once that comes online, that can be a real challenge, right? The karmas tend to be the most difficult parts of a chart. Again, each chart is different, and you're really going to experience that and understand that by having a reading and working through it with a person who's trained to do a reading and understand the flow of the chart. it really is a transmission and not just a regurgitation, as I've said. For me, and the word that I like to use is a more fulfilling life, right? You might call it discovering your purpose in life, your soul purpose, your soul contract with yourself, and all of those are right. But for whatever reason, I like fulfilling life, right? It's not necessarily always happy. It's not necessarily always easy, but there's a naturalness to it. There's a comfort, a familiarity. At least that's been my experience and other people that I've worked with. So that's really what it comes to, right? You're still gonna have to do the hard work. You're still gonna have to, do whatever it is that will help you work through the karma that you've chosen for your lifetime, and the stuff, the karma, the pieces that will help you work towards your goals. But it'll take on a life of its own. There'll be some more freedom in it. There'll be a little more relaxedness, right? I really felt that after my reading and understanding that, I've been doing a lot of the right things to assist myself, right? I came naturally to some of them, and I'm sure a lot of people experience that. They have a reading and they're like, oh, you know what? I've been doing that for a while now, and I've noticed that it really helps, right? And so there's that confirmation that that understanding that you've been doing the right thing. And I know that felt good for me. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm on the right track. I'm trusting myself, and I'm seeing results. And then it'll also help you shore up some of the places maybe that you weren't quite on track, and or things that you had been doing that were positive and helping you burn through some of this karma that maybe had fallen by the way. So I find it's a great thing to come back to. I come back to the readings in my chart often, just to kind of check in with myself and keep myself aligned with where I want to go, because I find happiness isn't the word I would use, but I'm the most content, I'm the most solid in myself when I'm doing all the things that are helping me work through this stuff. So I want to thank you for listening, for taking the time, and if you're curious about it, certainly reach out to me, and I can answer any more questions that you might have. But I'd love to do a reading with you. I'd like to get to know you at a deep level, and I'd love for you to have that experience of being seen, of being understood, and being able to provide you with some tools that'll really help you have that more fulfilling life. A life that feels more natural, more aligned. Um, yeah. So take care.